Hey guys, it's Miss Gross. So I want you guys to go over a little bit about 3.2, Who Said It, Enlightenment Thinkers. So I want you guys to be really thinking about connecting our Enlightenment thinkers who are from the 17th century to today's politics, to our country's politics, to the United States, how our government is set up, how we think, and how they may have influenced it. Remember, they're from the 17th century, but yet they are very intelligent to their years. So I want you to be thinking about it. The idea is that we are going to be matching quotes from the excerpt that you may have think yourself familiar with because it's from very similar from last week. And I want you to be thinking about these ideas while we're going through it. Also, we're going to be connecting from Mr. P's YouTube video lecture from last week as well. Again, if you want to watch the YouTube video, you're more than welcome to. It's going to be connected to this assignment. You can always go back, I promise. But I'm going to kind of review for you. So we're going to go over Mr. P's lecture from last week real quick through the notes. So our first Enlightenment thinker is John Locke. So in his lecture, he said, Locke, you would repeat life, liberty, property. Locke, life, liberty, property. The idea of natural rights. That people were born with these rights and that the government had a job to protect these rights. And if they didn't, you actually had the job and the right to overthrow this government for not protecting your natural rights, which was rights to life, liberty, and property. Our next Enlightenment thinker was horrible Hobbes. He said, Hobbes, you said horrible, horrible Hobbes, horrible Hobbes. The idea that he thought that human beings were naturally greedy, selfish, and cruel, that he believed that natural rulers were the only people to rule countries, and the United States doesn't really run as an absolute ruler. We elect our officials, where Hobbes would have probably thought that kings and queens really only certain smart people by a certain maybe IQ could have done it. Below this is Montesquieu, and Mr. P wanted you to break it down to 3 different syllables. So Montesquieu, 3 different syllables meaning 3 different branches. The idea that if one person had too much power, it would lead to tyranny. And those 3 branches that the United States have come up with, as well as other governments, is legislation, executive, judicial. Judicial meaning Supreme Courts, executive meaning our president, as well as legislation meaning our Congress. So our 2 houses that are actually people who create bills. Voltaire. Mr. P wanted you to remember vocal Voltaire. Vocal Voltaire. Voltaire really pushed upon the freedom of thought and expression in a way to fight oppression. So in the United States, we are very accustomed to the idea of freedom of speech, religion, press, and assembly, which is our First Amendment, right? So when you think of vocal Voltaire, you should be really thinking about freedom of speech and oppression, and thinking that that our citizens have that right, and how it actually was influenced. Bulgaria with 2 C's was what Mr. P wanted us to remember. Bulgaria with 2 C's. The 2 C's came from the idea of accused. So if you spell out accused, it's ACCUSED. The 2 C's were represented in Mr. P's video with crime and cruel, because Bulgaria really focused on criminology and the idea of crime and punishment, and how capital punishment was wrong. So how some states actually have the death penalty in place. Bulgaria probably wouldn't have been a fan of it, because he really wanted the crime to fit the punishment. So if you stole a piece of bread, you wouldn't lose your hand at this time. Women of Enlightenment. One of the biggest players in Enlightenment when it came to women was Mary Wollstonecraft, and she was a very educated philosopher. She wrote a book. She really believed in women equality and educational rights for women. She believed that women deserve the same rights as well as status as men. And she really was a key player throughout throughout most of the women's suffrage movement that happens later down the road in the United States. The next page is going to be these different quotes. So it's 1 through 12. We are going to focus on the first one. And the first one is going to be very similar to what we were talking about in our first Enlightenment thinker, which is going to be number 1, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Declaration of Independence, 1776. So, if you think about this quote, you should be seeing some similarities, but also some differences. The idea of life, liberty, and property to the idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The idea of property really changes throughout the years. So we changed the idea to the pursuit of happiness, the idea of American dream, the idea that you can expand your horizons, that you can gain things in life. Okay? So if I didn't give away the answer already, you're definitely going to get it now. So when we go to the next page, page number 4, they ask you to do for the number of quotes, the Enlightenment figure name, as well as explain the excerpt or quote matching or represents the Enlightenment thinker's ideas. So number 1 is John Locke. And how we're going to connect this was the idea of natural rights. So we're connecting it through inalienable rights and natural rights. The idea of inalienable rights is similar to natural rights, which is that people are born with and the government should protect them, right? So the idea of rights to life, liberty, and property to the change of the rights, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So now, Waves, your job is to go from 2 through 12 and look at these quotes and think about these Enlightenment thinkers and how they may be interconnected. So if I were to go up to number 2, we're going to be looking at the criminal prosecution, the criminology effect. So we were talking about criminology when we were going over thinkers. Now you're going to be telling me how that connects with it. What connects with that thinker? How does that impact today? Okay. Once you have filled out this graph, you can submit. You're done. Okay. We really want you to be thinking about how these Enlightenment thinkers impacted the U.S. and how it impacted politics and how it impacted the growth of our government. Remember, this is 17th century and it still lives on today, which is why we're having you learn about that, which is why we're taking up your time. And I hope you enjoy this activity. And if you need anything, please reach out, Waves. I know it's hard and we're here for you. Mr. P and I are trying our hardest and we want you guys to reach out if you need anything. So you guys have a good rest of your day and I'll talk at you next week, Waves.